The sun hung low over the hidden leaf village, casting long shadows across the training grounds where Naruto Uzumaki stood, panting heavily, his orange jumpsuit damp with sweat. Across from him, Sasuke Uchiha smirked, his Sharingan eyes glowing crimson as he adjusted the black glove on his right hand. "You're still too slow, loser," Sasuke taunted, his voice dripping with arrogance. Naruto wiped his brow and grinned, his blue eyes burning with determination. "Yeah? Well, I've got a few tricks left, bastard." He formed a familiar hand seal, summoning his signature technique, or at least, he tried to. But nothing happened. No swirl of chakra, no burst of energy. Just silence. Confusion flickered across Naruto's face. He tried again, clapping his hands together, but still, no Rasengan formed in his palm. Sasuke's smirk faltered as he, too, attempted to activate his Chidori, only for his lightning-charged hand to remain still. Around them, the world seemed to freeze. The wind no longer carried the hum of distant ninjutsu, the trees no longer rustled with the pulse of nature energy. Something was wrong. A scream echoed from the village square, snapping them both to attention. Naruto and Sasuke exchanged a glance before sprinting toward the commotion. What they found was chaos, shinobi and civilians alike stumbling, their techniques failing mid-battle. A group of rogue ninja, once held at bay by Konoha's defenders, now pressed forward with gleeful brutality, their swords and fists doing what their vanished jutsu could not. Naruto didn't hesitate. He lunged at the nearest rogue, his body moving on instinct even without chakra enhancement. His fist connected with the man's jaw, sending him sprawling, but another attacker swung a kunai at his back. Sasuke intercepted, his taijutsu sharp as ever, twisting the assailant's wrist until the blade clattered to the ground. "We can't rely on jutsu anymore," Sasuke muttered, his voice tight. "We fight like this or we die." Naruto nodded, his muscles coiling as he dodged a sweeping kick and countered with a spinning heel strike. The rogue ninja staggered, but two more took his place. Their movements were sloppy, untrained compared to Naruto's years of hard-earned combat experience, but numbers were against them. Sasuke moved like a shadow, his strikes precise, elbow to a throat, knee to a gut, each motion calculated to disable. Yet even their skill had limits. A monstrous roar split the air as a massive figure barreled through the village gates, a rogue ninja transformed into a hulking brute, muscles bulging unnaturally. Without chakra, such a transformation should have been impossible, yet there he stood, his fists the size of boulders. Naruto's breath hitched. "What the hell is that?" Sasuke's eyes narrowed. They must have found another way. Something beyond chakra. The brute charged, his fist crashing into the ground where Naruto had stood moments before, the earth cracking beneath the impact. Naruto rolled to his feet, heart pounding. He had fought gods and monsters, but never without his chakra. Never without the Nine Tails power surging through him. He gritted his teeth. Fine. If this was the game now, he'd play it. Sasuke darted in, feinting left before driving a knife-hand strike into the brute's ribs. The giant grunted but barely flinched, backhanding Sasuke into a nearby wall. Naruto saw red. With a wordless yell, he sprinted forward, leaping onto the brute's arm and scaling his shoulder like a tree. Before the monster could react, Naruto drove his elbow into the pressure point behind his ear. The brute howled, stumbling, but didn't go down. A kunai whipped past Naruto's face, embedding itself in the brute's eye. Sakura Haruno stood atop a crumbling rooftop, her medical pouch strapped to her thigh, her expression grim. "You idiots forget about me?" she called, already flipping down to join them. Without chakra-enhanced strength, her punches lacked their usual earth-shattering force, but her precision was deadly. She struck the brute's knee with surgical accuracy, and the joint buckled with a sickening crack. The three stood shoulder to shoulder, breathing hard. Around them, the rogues regrouped, their numbers still overwhelming. Naruto clenched his fists. "We can't hold them off forever," he admitted. Sasuke's jaw tightened. "We don't have to. We just need to find out what happened to our chakra." Sakura nodded. "The Hokage will have answers. We need to get to the tower." Naruto grinned despite the exhaustion creeping into his limbs. "Then what are we waiting for?" As the rogue ninja closed in, the trio prepared for their most desperate fight yet, not as shinobi with godlike power, but as warriors stripped to their rawest, most human strength. And in that moment, the real battle began. The world trembled as the last vestiges of chakra vanished, leaving Naruto and his allies reeling. The once familiar hum of energy was gone, replaced by a silence that felt unnatural. Naruto clenched his fists, his muscles straining as he forced himself to adjust. "No chakra. But that doesn't mean we're done," He growled, locking eyes with his enemy, a rogue shinobi who had somehow retained his power. The rogue lunged, his blade flashing in the dim light. Naruto barely dodged, rolling to the side as the steel grazed his shoulder. Pain flared, but he gritted his teeth and countered with a brutal uppercut, his raw strength sending the attacker stumbling back. Sasuke, fighting nearby, relied on his taijutsu, his movements fluid and precise even without the Sharingan. He ducked under a sweeping kick, twisted, and drove his elbow into an opponent's ribs. Bones cracked, but the enemy didn't falter. Without chakra, their bodies were their only weapons, and they wielded them ruthlessly. Sakura, meanwhile, relied on sheer medical knowledge, targeting pressure points with surgical precision. She weaved between foes, her fists a blur as she struck nerves and joints, disabling enemies with efficiency. But the rogue leader, the man who had stolen the last remnants of chakra, was different. He moved faster, hit harder, his body enhanced by the stolen energy. He smirked as he backhanded Naruto into a crumbling wall. Pathetic. Without chakra, you're nothing. Naruto coughed, blood staining his lips, but his eyes burned with defiance. You're wrong. Shinobi don't fight just because of chakra, we fight because we refuse to give up. He pushed off the ground, his muscles screaming in protest, and charged again. This time, he feinted left before pivoting into a spinning kick that connected with the rogue's jaw. The man staggered, but retaliated with a palm strike to Naruto's chest, sending him skidding across the dirt. Sasuke saw an opening and seized it. He dashed forward, using the terrain to his advantage, kicking off a fallen tree to gain momentum before delivering a crushing axe kick. The rogue blocked, but the force still drove him to one knee. Sakura joined the assault, her knuckles slamming into his kidney. The rogue snarled, his stolen chakra flaring as he unleashed a shockwave, throwing them all back. Naruto hit the ground hard, his vision swimming. He could feel his body reaching its limit, but he refused to yield. Memories flashed, his training, his failures, his promises. I won't let it end like this, he muttered, forcing himself up. His muscles burned, his breath came ragged, but he steadied himself. Across the battlefield, Sasuke and Sakura did the same, their resolve mirroring his. The rogue leader laughed. Still standing? Fine. I'll crush you properly this time. He raised his hand, dark energy swirling around it. But Naruto wasn't waiting. He sprinted, closing the distance in seconds. The rogue swung, but Naruto ducked under the blow, driving his fist into the man's gut. The rogue gasped, his stolen chakra flickering. Sasuke struck next, a brutal knee to the ribs, followed by Sakura's devastating punch to the temple. The rogue reeled, his body finally betraying him. Impossible, he spat. Naruto didn't hesitate. He grabbed the rogue's wrist, twisted, and with a roar, slammed him into the ground. The earth cracked under the impact. The rogue's stolen energy sputtered and died, his advantage gone. Panting, Naruto stood over him, his voice steady. This power, it was never just about chakra. It's about heart. And ours won't break. The rogue's eyes widened in disbelief before darkness took him. The battle was over, for now. But the war for their world had only just begun. The air crackled with tension as Naruto stood atop the ruined battlefield, his breath ragged, his orange jacket torn and singed. The sky above was a swirling maelstrom of dark energy, remnants of the final clash between chakra and the void that sought to consume it. Across from him, the enemy, a being of pure negation, a void-given form, hovered, its form flickering like a dying flame. This ends now, Naruto growled, his voice raw but unwavering. Around him, the remnants of his allies lay battered but unbroken, Sasuke's Sharingan blazing despite the blood trickling from his eye, Sakura's fists clenched even as her healing chakra sputtered, and the rest of the Shinobi alliance rallying for one last stand. The void being lunged, its movements a blur of unnatural speed, but Naruto met it head-on, his fist colliding with its shadowy form in a shockwave that sent debris flying. Sasuke appeared in a flash of black flames, his sword slashing through the creature's midsection, only for the wound to stitch itself back together instantly. It's adapting, Sasuke hissed, leaping back as a tendril of darkness lashed out, barely missing his throat. Naruto gritted his teeth. Without chakra, their usual tactics were useless. But they had something else now, sheer, unyielding will. Sakura dashed forward, her fist slamming into the ground with enough force to split the earth, sending fissures racing toward the enemy. The creature staggered, its form flickering again. Physical force did hurt it. Hit it with everything you've got, Naruto roared, charging once more. The Shinobi alliance followed, a wave of kunai, fists, and pure determination crashing against the void. The creature shrieked, its form writhing as it was pushed back, but it wasn't enough. It retaliated with a pulse of darkness, sending bodies flying. Naruto felt his muscles scream in protest, his vision blurring. He had no more tricks, no more power-ups, just himself. And then, in that moment of desperation, he remembered the words of his old sensei, Iruka, "It's not about the power you have, but the bonds that make you strong." With a sudden clarity, he reached out, not with chakra, but with something deeper. His hand found Sasuke's shoulder, and then Sakura's, and one by one, the others joined, a chain of unbroken resolve. The void being hesitated, sensing the shift. Then, in a burst of collective strength, they struck as one. Naruto's fist, Sasuke's blade, Sakura's punch, and the combined force of every last shinobi on that field tore through the creature's core. A deafening silence followed as the void shattered like glass, dissipating into nothingness. The sky cleared, the oppressive weight lifting as if the world itself exhaled. Exhausted, Naruto collapsed to his knees, his body trembling. Sasuke slumped beside him, his Sharingan finally dimming. "We did it," Sakura whispered, her voice hoarse. Around them, the battlefield was a wasteland, but the sun, real, unfiltered sunlight, bathed them in warmth for the first time in what felt like forever. In the aftermath, the world was irrevocably changed. Without chakra, the shinobi way of life had to adapt. Villages rebuilt not as military powers, but as communities. Naruto, now Hokage in more than just title, worked to forge a new era where strength came from unity, not just power. Sasuke, his journey of redemption reaching its end, became a guardian of this fragile peace, while Sakura pioneered new forms of medicine to heal the scars of war. The final battle had cost them everything, and given them everything in return. As Naruto looked out over the recovering land, he smiled. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, it was truly theirs to shape.